Slam Sector contains levels of brain rot that may be harmful or traumatizing to some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, chat. Woo!
Hey, everybody.
Cracking open a cold one. How are y'all doing today?
Doing
good.
well. I did my taxes today.
You did your taxes today? I should probably do my
Yeah.
taxes. Actually, I think I'm just gonna commit some mild tax fraud, like as a treat.
I mean,
I-
honestly, right now, that might... We don't know where your taxes are going, so you may as well. Right?
Simply
I
refuse
never
to pay
cook my
taxes.
books.
Never?
I don't do that.
It is
Anyway.
it is currently pouring rain in...
Is it raining everywhere? Because it was
Oh my
raining
God, it
today
is-
in Vegas. It was raining today here. Raining
Wait, did it rain
in
today?
California. Yeah, it rained this morning. It was raining on my way to
Alright.
work.
I just assume it always rains in Atlanta.
Yeah, it's always raining perpetually.
Like
Um,
once or twice a day it rains for like 10 minutes.
That's Florida more like.
I don't know. That's my experience with Atlanta, though.
Well, I think you bring it with you.
Maybe.
Are you only happy when
Anyway,
it rains?
welcome back to Slam Sector After Dark. Today it's gonna be kind of a chill show, but we're gonna be
Mhm.
talking about Retcon, so it might get a little bit heated. Because as you may or may not know, there was a divisive Eldar retcon in the most recent codex, where Wraithbone is no longer just like summoned from the warp, right? Now it's composed of ores and minerals. And that's all this paragraph said, and people are getting their panties in a bunch about it. I don't have any particularly strong feelings about it. I think that it's still like open for interpretation, but I think that there's probably good reasons they did it. But I know Sean has stronger feelings on it than I do. But before we let him take over, I just want to jump in and say I would very much appreciate it. We would all very much appreciate it if you liked and subbed. Share this video. We're hoping to hit 5,000 subs by the end of the year, so that would be a huge help. If you want to toss just a few bucks our way, the best way to support the channel is by joining as a channel member or joining Patreon, and you can get a bunch of cool perks, like voting on matchups, which, speaking of, the matchup for Monday, the vote just closed. By an overwhelming majority, orcs will be the horde.
Wow.
So probably surprising nobody. But on top of voting for matchups, you get access to the book club, which the vote for that just finished. We're reading Assassinorum Kingmaker for the book club this quarter. And if you give us enough money, we might commit vandalism in your honor. If you watch this past Monday's stream, you'll see an example of said vandalism from our very own One Speed Wonder in chat there. Anyway, with all that out of the way, Sean, tell us your thoughts on the retcon.
So, here's the thing. Before we get into thoughts, I have a question for you two.
Okay.
What is the function of lore when it comes to Warhammer 40,000?
Sell models.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. If you're asking GW corporate, it's just supposed to create opportunities for, I don't know,
Storytelling on the tabletop.
for
Yeah,
fun.
And
you know?
I think that would be, and I think that if you were to ask GW corporate, that would be their corporate answer, right?
Mhm.
I think there's three main reasons, right? So number one, there's a preface to number one. This is not the number one reason. I'm saying this one first because we're not going to go into it. We're not going to elaborate on it. Number one reason for lore is representation. Listen, if you have a problem with that last retcon, I'm not here to talk to you about it. I'm not here to convince you about it. It matters and it's fine, right? Number two, inspire creativity for your custom army. Essentially, to make you want to buy paints and buy more models to build your army. And number 1 is to inspire more people to play, right? The representation thing is about inspiring more people to play. And number 3, inspire reasons for you to play the game, for you to actually fight on the tabletop.
So sell models.
Essentially sell models, right? But like, if you're to get the corporate stance and like what it means to us as for players, right? Like all 3 of those matter as far as players go, right? I don't like Votann as much as I should because I don't feel like they represent the dwarves that I want to see represented. Right? Whereas squats do.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're going to sell less models because that lore does not grab me, but it grabs Elliot like a motherfucker, right? So that's the point of the lore is to inspire you to play him, inspire you to interact in a certain way. So with this retcon, it's a tool chest, right? The lore is there to be a tool chest, and here's the other thing: 40k lore always changes. It always has, and I'm going to prove to you that Wraithbone, the way we understand it before today, is a retcon.
Oh my god!
So I keep seeing
retcon.
It's a reverse retcon. They're retconning it
shit.
back to what it originally was.
Yeah, Eldar back in
This
Rogue
retcon
days were a lot different.
This retcon puts it back to 2e. So,
Okay.
Everyone's quoting
I didn't
Valdor.
understand what you were saying. You said 2e, but I read.
Second
I
edition.
heard that as one word. I heard it as 2e,
2e.
and I was like, "What does that mean?" It's back to 2e.
Craft World 2e from second edition.
What are you drinking there, Sean?
Well, this is a so Jordan, I spoke with you recently.
Yeah, you did.
This is a
Speak with me a lot.
Oh yeah, I know, but specifically about this. This is the current painkiller recipe I'm trying.
Okay, yeah.
As
I love
made by I know you do, and that's why I'm trying to find a painkiller that I also enjoy so that I can
Like
include
that's
it
the name
on
of the
my
drink. You're not just drinking
Painkiller.
to reduce pain.
I mean, yes.
No, well, no,
it's
that's
both.
that's why it's
It is
named that.
both.
It's called a painkiller to relieve your pain, right? Like it's you drink these and you forget about your pain. This is the Death and Company spec. Death and Company is a very famous craft cocktail bar in Los Angeles and New York, and coming to Atlanta this year.
Oh,
which I'm very excited because I've never actually been to the LA one. So,
okay.
Are they Blood
yeah.
Angel themed?
Death and Company, yeah, kind of actually. They're like that. Like they look like clothes. Their like whole vibe is like clothes that Zach Jordan and I would wear.
Oh,
okay.
is it,
Like
is
Mourner,
it-
like
is
they
it
look like a Mourner shirt.
Oh my god, what's the bar in Atlanta? There's a bar in Atlanta that's like that. And I can't
No.
remember.
It's more like black. It's I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the Cuban,
No,
like the not tiki
No.
bar.
It's
Oh
not
no.
one that you've been to. I think.
Oh, you're talking about the one with the underground cellar and the cult table that I want to go to, but
I don't know. Anyway,
everyone went.
proceed.
Anyways,
I'll
everyone-
remember the name of it eventually.
everyone went when I was doing Slime Sector. So
Cold.
it's got like an underground like never mind. We talked about doing a rookies episode there, Jordan.
I don't know.
Okay. It was your idea. Okay, so everyone is referencing Valdor.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if I'm saying that right.
Valdor.
Well, not Valdor like
The-
Constantine, like
Oh.
Valdor, VALE DOR.
I don't know who
Valdor.
that is. Valador?
It is a novel that came out and has some very
Yeah,
explicit passages about the creation of Wraithbone, about pulling Wraithbone from the warp. Hey, I hate to break it to you. That book came out in 2015. I hate to break it to you even more. That was 10 years ago.
No,
That's
don't
the
say that.
part that
Don't
wounds.
say that. That hurts. That hurts.
That's a
I
long
was like,
time ago.
2015?
You've
That
wounded
was
me.
yesterday.
Yeah, that's not that long ago. You know, that's 10 years ago. That's a decade ago. So here is the first mention of Wraithbone, abridged. I didn't write down the whole quote because I read the whole passage from second edition. It is a psycho-reactive material that they engineer with psychotechnic engineering, manipulating matter using mind energy. It is a mutable psychoplastic. It is growing and reacting to the environment like plants. Simple devices, such as the shuriken cannon, would function exactly like the human equivalent. So a shuriken cannon made of Wraithbone is going to function just like a shuriken cannon were a human to engineer the same weapon. Small, simple technologies made of Wraithbone function as they should. This is important.
Okay. Because
they're very specific about this, and they change that later. So this is about all of Eldar technology, and then they reference specifically the most unusual of these materials is Wraithbone. Craftworld skeletons are made of Wraithbone. It can repair itself, and its growth and repair and formation are sped up by psychic manipulation. There's no mention in the original mention of Wraithbone of it being spawned from the warp.
Okay.
And a lot of what is said here, Matt. Go ahead.
Well, what were the terms you use, like psychokinetic?
So it is they say so it's a psychoreactive, psychoplastic, and psychotechnic is what they use multiple times. And that does show up. Second edition, third edition, fourth edition were the three that I looked at. I don't know about more recently.
So all that just kind of means it can be manipulated by psychic energy.
Yeah, it can be manipulated by a bone singer.
Bone saw.
Is that what they're called? Bone singer. It can be manipulated by a bone singer.
There's one in the thumbnail.
Now, Veldor by Guy Haley and White Dwarf 127 by Gav Thorpe both give. It is. It's from 20, I think 16 or 17.
Old.
Don't quote me on that. Could be older. It actually
9 years.
Actually could be older. They reference it being directly pulled from the warp, right? Like Wraithbone. No, there's other mentions of it earlier, but that's like the one that people keep quoting, and so that's the one I'm using because I don't.
That's like the book excerpt where they talk about it being like warp energy that then starts manifesting into the bone.
Yeah. Now, other later articles also say that Wraithbone performs the actions of the machine. Crew members use psychic powers to control the machine. I say that directly contradicts the second edition lore of if it's a simple machine, it functions like a machine. Right? Like,
so when they say they psychically control it, is that like in reference to like a shuriken pistol, or is that like in reference to like a Falcon grav tank?
Who knows? I don't know. Fuck if I know. It doesn't like they don't clarify, right? Like that's the problem. It's the problem with 40K stuff, right? Like they throw these terms around, they throw these ideas around, but they don't think of like the wider implications.
I mean, I think it's
like
okay for some of that to be left up to the imagination, right?
I agree.
Leaving it amorphous makes sense.
I absolutely agree. But
malleable
when we're gonna, but and then when we're gonna like
reactive.
Yeah, because I've heard to me from my memory, like the term psychoplastic to me means explicitly from the warp. Because of how it was used in like third edition and later.
So Wraithbone specifically is from the warp. The other psychoplastics that they use and psychoreactive materials that they use are not.
They're just mind malleable.
They don't say. They don't say. Whenever they talk about a material being pulled directly from the warp, they're only referencing Wraithbone. At least they only directly reference Wraithbone. Whether or not that applies to the other ones, whether or not, and in the codexes, like whether or not that applies to the other ones, it's a little more like unclear. But they do say like it's composite materials. There are passages where they say it's a composite material. That is more emphasized in the new line because there's only the one sentence, like two sentences. So the new quote, which I don't have pulled up actually, ironically, because I knew I could pull it up really easy. So give me a second. The new line. The Wraithbone substance from which each craft world is wrought is a composite material formed of various compounds, ores, and minerals. It is as grown as much as forged, which to me sounds like the OG second edition description. And there are later descriptions also that talk about it being grown. Eldari Psykers, known as Bone Singers, can manipulate Wraithbone, can subtly manipulate Wraithbone, which again goes back to that line in the second edition one that it can repair itself and is sped up by psychic manipulation. Right? That's a subtle change, right? It's not, it's, crazy shaped by it. Craft worlds are the finest surviving example of this wondrous craft, which to me implies that they're losing access to the craft.
Well, craft world Eldar are kind of dying off. So
right,
then they're the
because
ones
they have to go.
The Drukhari don't do any of this because it requires psychics.
And that's what I was going to say was my next line, because we had talked about this briefly in one of our private discords, just because someone who's not a member of Slam Sector brought it up, and so we just we're participating in that there, and
join the
you had
Discord.
brought up that yes, but the person that anyways, you had talked about the Drukhari, so why don't you go into the Drukhari side of it? Yeah. Because my next point is about Drukhari.
Okay.
So you go into the Drukhari side of it, and then we'll come back to this.
So essentially, the Drukhari lore, as I understand it, they don't have any Wraithbone stuff because the manipulation, whether or not the creation requires it, requires psionics, and the Drukhari have stopped using their psychic ability for thousands upon thousands of years, to the point where it's atrophied and it's prohibited inside of Kamara. So they use more mundane methods. They don't use psionic things to shape their battles. They shape them by hand, either via slaves or advanced technology. So even I think in the thing I said, why would this limit the Drukhari from having this if it's ores and minerals? I mean, if it's still primarily manufactured or shaped with psychics, that would stop the Drukhari from having it also. Necessarily have to be from the warp if the primary means for sculpting it is psionics, or the best means. That's the main point about Drukhari. They just don't have any psionics to help them shape it. There's not much else to say.
I will say I also didn't know that Drukhari didn't use any psychics. I just had kind of assumed having things called witches that they use some amount of psychic energy, but no, not at all.
Yeah, no. So those are witches with a Y. They're
completely different. Completely different.
Yeah, witches. Well, then you know what? The new Slam Sector stance is that they are witches.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's not.
The Dark Eldar stopped using the psionic abilities after the fall because opening themselves up to the warp, it just put them at high risk of being consumed by Slaanesh. And the Dark Eldar in particular kind of already have a target on their back. I want to say more so than Craft World, because they have that constant draw of their soul being sucked away. Slaanesh knows where they're at. So if they start using the warp, Slaanesh is going to be gonna get you. Now, if they get soul stones and stuff, I think they can start using psionics and stuff again, but they haven't done it in so long. And I can't remember if this is part of it, but they also are heavily cloned. I don't know if that impacts it.
I'm
sure
it does, probably.
Yeah, they don't have as strong of a psionic presence.
40K 10s.
They gained the ability to essentially be soul vampires and suck other people's souls out. So,
I was going to say 40K typically, with a couple exceptions, 40K typically tends to go with the fact that genetic engineering deadens the soul in a way that prevents you from accessing the warp, with the exception of Space Marines, right? Just based Magnus gene scene and all that. Okay, so and basically this doesn't break Dark Eldar lore, right? They still don't have psychers, they still can't shape it, even if they none of this talks because I'm going to take a step back here. People kept saying like, "Hey, this is so that they conflict with the Votan."
Yeah.
Which I thought was referenced in the codex. It wasn't. That's apparently not in the codex.
That's just the conclusion that people drew.
That's like
Gotcha.
that's people using the lore as a toolbox to create their own reasons.
Sure, and I like that. I like that reasoning. But I was under the impression that the way it was said to me initially, I was under the impression that was in the codex, and it's not. So like, I don't know, like 2 sentences is not enough for me to get up in arms about. Yet here I am with a presentation. I've got a whole bunch more quotes. They basically all like boil down to the same thing, and they all boil down to people like quoting things that ironically in certain ways do support this new phrasing of it. Because people keep conflating psychoplastic and Wraithbone. Wraithbone is just one type of psychoplastic, right? We don't know anything. We don't know anything about the other psychoplastics, really. We know like a couple things here and there.
So what makes something a plastic?
Like in real I don't know.
Chemical engineering? It has to do with its like malleability.
A plastic is a synthetic material made from a wide range of organic polymers. I'm not going to name them all, that can be molded into shape while soft and then set into a rigid or slightly elastic form. So I think like synthetic material kind of implies that it's created psychically.
Sure. Yeah.
And then can be molded further and manipulated by psychic energy.
Yeah. Like I can't fault people too hard for when they hear psychoplastic only thinking of Wraithbone, because I want to say in a lot of like Eldar codexes, because when they talked about psychoplastic, they were just talking about Wraithbone. They're like, Wraithbone's a psychoplastic, and like they didn't really elaborate on other materials that Eldar use. Like that's like it's like their signature, style is they use Wraithbone on stuff. So I can't fault people too hard for like having that strong association with just Wraithbone.
Yeah, and I think like there's no reason to name like what they're going to give all the other psychoplastics a bunch of different names and qualities. Like that doesn't contribute to anything.
I want to see a stock list from Eldar Home Depot. I want to know everything.
What do they got in Eldar Home Depot?
Well, it would have to be on a, what do they call their relic worlds? Are they relic worlds? Ghost worlds?
The
Crone worlds.
Maiden worlds?
Crone worlds.
Crone worlds?
Crone worlds. Yeah. So like you'd have to go to Crone World to find one, right? Like they don't have them on Craft World ships. Okay, but I want to go back
on Craft World ships?
No, because I think they just have what they have, right?
On the Craft Worlds, they only have space hardwares.
I do want to
banning Ryan.
God damn it!
No, wait.
So I do want to point out there is a line there that's the finest surviving example, which to me is super interesting because it implies that Wraithbone is more rare than people like.
It is. So my understanding is that like Wraithbone doesn't actually get used that often.
Right.
It's not like a super common material for them to use.
Which would also, to me, say that potentially, like, this could... them saying that, like... I gotta pull that line again, I'm sorry. Them saying that it is a composite material formed from various compounds, ores, and minerals. Like, that doesn't mean it's not pulled from the warp. Right? Because they could pull warp energy, start forming compounds and ores and stuff, and then form that into Wraithbone, right?
They're just doing psychic chemistry.
Yeah, like as far as I understand it, you can manifest things from the warp that then are just it has in order to maintain its existence, it has to become
a thing,
something material. Whereas like a demon, I think probably the thing that is twisting people up on it is like a demon is like inherently immaterium and has to stay that way, and so it can pop into real space under certain circumstances. But like you kill a demon, it turns into like goo and like floats off in the wind or whatever. I don't know if that's true for everything that gets pulled out of the warp.
Sure. Yeah, and that's my understanding as well, right? You also have the fact that so there's a couple of things I want to touch on that like don't really support or like refute anything, but from a fantasy standpoint, this is very much harkening back to like the Tolkien idea of the elves sing to form, you know, wish Ashton was here. The forming of Middle Earth is done by the Valar singing it into existence.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
The elves sing to shape trees.
It's
Whether or not that's
formation
Lord of the Rings.
all of Arda? Like, not just
Arda.
Middle Earth.
Yeah, there we
Middle
go.
Earth's one part,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah,
The formation of all of Arda is from singing.
Yeah, but I don't know that our chat might not know that Middle Earth, Arda,
And then
whatever.
Melkor wanted to make his own song and started trying to do a mix, and it was terrible. And so,
remix.
yeah.
Melkor was just a trap DJ, right?
Yeah. He.
Ashton, don't watch this episode.
Keep going.
No, you're fine. There's a bunch of other fantasy, whether or not in Lord of the Rings the elves actually sing stuff into existence, like shaping of like. There's a lot of fantasy tropes of the elves singing to shape trees.
Yeah,
which to me very much is like
Warhammer.
Like, I was gonna say, I bet Warhammer Fantasy is that way. I would bet that the I don't know, the AOS faction with the Minotaurs in the mountains and the elves. You know the one.
Oh,
the High Elves.
Yeah,
the High Elves, right? Like if you told me like
Lumineth,
they
Lumineth
sang,
Grimlords.
if you tell me the Lumineth sing to like form certain things, right? Like that tells me, that.
Oh shit!
It's the
Apparently,
same trope.
One Speed Wonder knows his Lord of the Rings shit in chat. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, Eru Ilúvatar.
In Warhammer Fantasy, I'm pretty sure there is like literally tree singing is a thing for Athaloran and the Wood Elves.
Yeah. Eru sings the Valar into existence, and then the Valar join him in the song to create Arda and Middle Earth. And then Melkor goes,
because like
there's not enough.
Like,
there's
yeah, he just wanted to drop a beat, you know. But in Warhammer, like in 40K, like 40K is drawn from Warhammer Old World, obviously. The thing that became the Wraith Lords and the Wraith Guard in 40K was the Tree Men and the Dryads, pretty much. Like that's the closest facsimile, because you know they in Warhammer lore are kind of in a more roundabout way sort of constructs with elf spirits in them. They've like forgotten, in some cases they remember, but they've mostly forgotten that they were elves, and they're just like
they get ornery,
hooked into the tree matrix.
They run into a problem with. I was like doing some reading on the Wraith stuff just because I thought it was interesting, and apparently like some of the Wraiths just refuse to like go back to sleep, basically. And so they just wander around and like kind of become a problem.
Well, and like because Eldar, I assume Eldar magics like have a lot to do with singing, because like you have wraiths, the spirit singers. Noble spirit singers are the ones that help form spirit stones or help like activate spirit stones or like something. I remember reading this separate of all this.
Eldar lore is like kind of a weak point for me, so I'm not really sure.
But I think they were saying that because it's not a soul stone or spirit stone. It's not a spirit stone until it's sung by a spirit singer into being a spirit stone. It's something else first.
It's just a rock.
No. It's like some other like
I'm kidding.
Yeah. But it's like some other sort of like special, unique rock.
It's just like a cool rock that they bought from Eldar Home Depot.
Yeah. It's all the stuff in their Infinity Matrix. Yeah. I'm not super well versed in Craft World Eldar lore because, you know,
they're not real. They're a bunch
of losers who hopped in RVs and flew off into space because they couldn't handle the vibe, you know.
So I don't know. Like I think it's, and at the end of the day, like it's not a big deal, right? Like this one line will probably get forgotten, right? Like
Yeah. And this is like just the most recent, like there's been a couple of like retcons that people really get hung up on. But like retcons are foundational to 40K. Like the entire 40K setting as we know it is completely different from how it was first conceived. Like no reason to get into like every single example because we don't have time for that. But like the entirety of Rogue Trader was a completely different universe basically than it is now. And second edition kind of like second edition was basically just one giant retcon. That
to Rogue Trader, yeah.
It created the foundations for what we have now as 40K.
Well, and even like even going further than that, like I would say retcons are sort of foundational to a long running narrative.
Sure.
Like
yeah.
If you look at like the best examples I can think of
Star Wars
are Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, D&D, or let's even go more specific, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Forgotten Realms, 40K, right? Like all of those have depended on retcons for them to develop new lore down the line, right? If not going to go into the Disney Star Wars thing, right? It's a losing.
That was like
maybe
that was perhaps the biggest retcon like in history.
Do you know I spent $40 on this yesterday? You're not gonna win a Disney Star Wars argument with me.
I mean, I would say even more so for 40K than anything else. Retcons are part of it because like just a theme of 40K is like unreliable narrator.
Yeah,
and, like unreliable information. That's just like that is like a purposeful theme to the whole setting. So
so you can like build your own stories into it.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, I can just like choose to believe that this thing isn't true because the person who told me that is unreliable.
Oh, we're just missing information. You know, like the Lost Primarchs originally were there, so you could make
that
your
was
own
like
chapters.
a whole thing with like the Administratum is constantly losing information and also like shitting out propaganda. So like everything that you hear from them is like probably missing information. It's probably like super biased. There's like all sorts of reasons that like they give you to fill in the gaps yourself. And like I was saying, this is the most recent one. Some of the other recent ones, there was female custodies. I'm not sure that's a box I want to open right now.
I very specifically didn't name that one earlier, and here you go.
That's what you were talking about with your point one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was like a pretty recent one that people got pretty hung up on. That's probably like the biggest one. But another one that was pretty recent that I found kind of funny that people got really hooked on was the retcon that Rogel Dorn tanks have just like always existed. It's a really weird situation too, right? Because they could have very easily been like, they just like found an STC for the Rogel Dorn tank and now they have them, and instead they were like, no, Rogel Dorns have just always existed. Like, what do you mean by that? like where have they always existed?
Well, and like there has been some positive retcon stuff too.
Totally.
Like Necromunda just had the new squat book, which sort of retcons, sort of explains like
the
Votann. how the squats on Necromunda were Votann but now aren't Votann.
Yeah.
Like it like gives them space to not be Votann, but like they were Votann.
I mean, if you look at the entirety of the Votann faction, that whole faction is a retcon.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That whole faction has layers of retcons.
Because they just scrapped the whole. They just scrapped the whole like they were eradicated by Tyranids thing, right?
They didn't scrap it. It was like a lot of them were wiped out by the Tyranids, but they weren't fully killed.
Yeah, well, and my understanding too was like that was like some Votann.
It was
but
some
like
Votann.
Not all Votann were even involved in that.
No,
like was my understanding. Yeah.
The Rogel Dorn thing is like is a really good example because like
It's a funny one.
It is funny.
if we're actually thinking about the 40K universe from a world building standpoint, there absolutely 100% would be a wide variety of main battle tank across the entire fucking galaxy. But Games Workshop is just a company in England making kits. They can't make
Small
a
indie
galaxy's
company,
worth of
Games
main
Workshop.
battle tanks. Yeah, I mean, especially when the Le Mans Russ was first created, like, you know, that was like a kit they could make. You know, their limitations as a producer of miniatures to represent this galaxy.
They would lose a fuck ton
if
of
we
money if
used-
they just started making a million variations of main battle tank.
Yeah, they'll go out of business if they try to make enough variations of main battle tank to actually be appropriate for the lore.
Yeah.
And if we stick them to the limitations of what they can produce as a company to represent this universe, then the universe itself, if it's like strictly tied to that, is not going to be a well-designed universe. So they need the flexibility to be like, yeah, Rogel Dorns have been here the whole time, because that makes sense for the universe.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Well,
And people
and
guard players got really hooked on that one for some reason. Everybody else is just like kind of whatever, but like guard players, because guard players are like really into guard, right? So they were like, "What
look,
the fuck
no
do you
offense,
mean?"
no offense, Katie and Sergeant Steele. We love you. You're great.
I'd be curious to get his thoughts on it.
Actually, you know who else? Like I'm gonna commend Thunder Punch, Colonel Thunder Punch.
Yeah. From the Grand Narrative.
Yeah. So him and I interacted on the Discord pre-narrative, and then something happened in that room that we were in the room with him.
Yeah,
the ice room.
He got mad at me.
He got mad at me too because I'm like, I was like our command, like we like butted heads. I'm like, read the we were told by our commander, read the fucking mission, and no one read the fucking cards, and their whole battle group like got all like up in arms, and I was being an ass. That's fine, whatever. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know I'd already interacted with him. I didn't know that I had named my tank after him. We patched it up after I realized who he was. I'm like, hey, I named my gladiator.
He was the first one that I revealed my traitorous intent to.
Yeah, I remember that.
He came up to me and started giving me orders, and I was like, no, and I like handed him one of my little badges.
But like that is a man who loves his fucking guard. Like that is a man who his guard army is beautiful. And I remember he saw Ryan's Steel Legion. He's like, those fuck, right? Like, because he knows his guard, he loves his OG guard and like all that. But like, yeah, the guard should be a crazy varied force. Like the number of Cadian and Cadian alike armies on tabletops is too many, right? There needs to be.
The guard are like the hardest army for Games Workshop to produce
to represent properly
accurately.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan 907 in chat kind of brings up an interesting point that I never really thought about the Wraithbone change cheapening the Eldar story of a post-scarcity society. They could just create their most important resource from nothing but warp energy, leading to their fall into excess because they had unlimited amounts of one resource that they needed to be an empire.
But my understanding was always that they were a post-scarcity society, but they aren't now.
Correct. Yeah, that's the point.
Right.
They were a post-scarcity society because they could just create infinite amounts of Wraithbone. Yeah.
And like, I don't think here's my thought too. I don't think that this prevents that from still being true.
Correct.
Right?
I feel the same.
Like maybe at one point, like my whole stance on it is like, yeah, at one point it was probably very common for them to just rip Wraithbone out of the warp. But now, with the way the warp functions, right? Like the function of the warp has even changed with the birth of Slaanesh, with the opening of the Eye of Terror. Like,
and I mean, maybe part of it
emergence
is like it has to be composites now because they just like can't produce enough
yeah,
Wraithbone.
they can't, and they don't have enough. They don't have enough bone singers to, you know, the art of being a bone singer. Because they even say, again, I keep going back to this statement that craft worlds are the greatest surviving example, which that word choice implies they are losing the art of creating Wraithbone, or the art of creating Wraithbone is becoming more and more rare, right? Which still fits with them being a post-scarcity society, and it supports them going to the Maiden Worlds and the Crone Worlds to go salvage Spirit Stones and go salvage other materials that existed in their post-scarcity society that they no longer have access to.
Yeah.
I'm going to look up the Spirit Stones.
I don't think those two things are like mutually exclusive at all.
Yeah. I mean, when you really examine the little tiny excerpt they have here,
and it truly is just like 2 lines, right? So
yeah, it doesn't. People are latching on to ores and minerals. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't manifest like psychoplastic material out of the warp.
I mean, who says those ores and minerals weren't manifested from the warp?
Exactly. There's a lot that's open to interpretation.
Yeah.
And
I mean, yeah, so a lot of people will be like, "Oh, retcon bad," like just because it's a retcon, right? Like there's been a lot of good retcons. I kind of just like gesture broadly to the entirety of the current Necron lore.
Yeah. Well, and like even there's ways that they've retconned Primaris from 8th edition, like since 8th edition.
Space Marines. Like
no, right, but that's but generally. Oh, got it. Yeah,
so I'm like kind of trying not to think about things that have been retconned from Rogue Trader, because that's just like everything. Including that.
But like Primaris have been retconned in a way to like, hey, crossing the Rubicon Primaris is like incredibly dangerous and catastrophic, and like it's less than a 50% survival. And now it's like, we got it. We figured it out.
Now it's kind of trivial.
They have a lore reason for that. It was experimental procedure, and they got better and better at it.
Yeah,
is the explanation that I've read.
Sure,
but
also too, like the whole thing was Primaris are incorruptible, blah blah blah. They're perfect in every way, and that was like changed in Arcs of Omen because you had Primaris Marines starting to get corrupted to chaos.
Yeah, with the what was it, the blood sickness?
Something like
that, which to me that's just a really good example of like Imperial propaganda, right? Like
there's like a bunch of ways to like take retcons like this and like justify them, I guess, like reconcile them with current lore. Yeah,
like the Custodies using brother as a gender neutral term.
Still don't want to open that box.
I just did.
Didn't you say at the beginning that we're not? But you
know what? But Jordan. But you know what? Jordan loosened the loosened the wrap.
Jordan
on that
retconned your original statement.
I have one thing to say about it. Regardless of your opinion on the retcon itself, doing it via a Twitter post was certainly a choice. Is all I have to say.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It
was. Yes, but then they tweeted out.
The retcon was there have always been female custodians.
They've always been here.
Yeah.
Doing that via a Twitter post was crazy.
Wild.
It was spicy for sure. Yeah.
And that's it. I don't have anything else to say about it.
So real quick, Spirit Stones are formed from Waystones, which are taken from
Curd Stones.
Crone Worlds.
Oh.
Curd Stones, yeah.
What were the Waystones originally used for? Was it still capturing souls?
I don't know. But they are psycho-reactive crystals called Waystones. Because we're just gonna fucking throw buzzwords around.
Yeah, it's all magic.
I think I've talked about my opinion. People are talking about the Custodians in chat. I think I've talked about my opinions on stream about it before. Frankly, I don't give a shit. I think it's fine. But yeah,
One speed wonder, I agree.
I love golden mommies. Hell yeah, brother.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, hold on. I do want to call out. This is what I do want to call out. As someone whose Custodes collection did expand as a result of the change.
Yeah.
Great retcon.
Yeah. Great
Right.
retcon. 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
One
Hey, you know
note,
what? If
one
that
note.
causes you to sell off the army, then you know what? GW's doing their job because you got someone else to grow their collection, and now because
They're still selling
give up
models.
40 and because whoever sold that army, I bet you still plays 40k. I bet you still buys 40k models.
So what you're
Is
saying
gonna go buy another army.
As someone who's always liked Wraith Lords and Wraith Guard, but hasn't really played Craftworld Eldar, this would be the time to start a Wraith army. There's
Maybe,
probably
I don't
some
know.
rage discounts out there.
I don't think this one.
I don't
here's
think
the thing.
anyone's quitting Eldar over.
Yeah, I know.
this
I have
retcon,
I have
unfortunately.
seen some people say this was their last straw. They're done. Right?
Unlikely.
I'm like, what the fuck? Like,
Don't be stupid.
2 lines, dude.
I feel like
Yeah.
Get over it.
people are just, I don't know.
So there
There-
were
there-
two.
I don't want to get into a commentary on
So
it.
there
on
were
that, but-
there were 2 Rogel Dorn retcons. The first one was Rogel Dorn tanks have always existed. The second one was that Rogel Dorn was originally fully dead, and his body was encased in amber, in an
yeah.
Ian Watson novel. That novel has since been declared not canon.
Wait, was it that his... Did they
his
actually have his
bones.
full body at one point?
They had his bones.
I thought it was just his hand.
No. So they had his
I thought it was just-
bones. They had his entire skeleton without the hands.
No fists?
Yeah. Encased
The
in
most
amber.
important part.
And that novel has since it's one my research, it's one of 3 novels in the entirety of 40k that have just like GW has said that's not canon.
Oh, they just
There's a-
straight out.
There's
There's a few of those, I thought.
What was the other one?
there was a book called Farseer, and then I don't remember the third one. But yeah, there's
Wait,
only
like the
been
Path
a couple.
of the Farseer?
I think it was just called Farseer or something. I don't know.
Oh, Farseer. That's about that rogue trader guy.
Sure, maybe I don't know anything.
I
about
read that one. It had a cool Emperor's Children guy in it. He was my favorite
Here's-
character. But
Here's my tiny umbrella to protect me from the tears of all the
it.
butthurt.
here's me.
And now of course, like it's reversed where they don't have his body; they just have his hand.
they just have.
Yeah. Well, and so the other thing, like the sort of like regardless of retcons, there's also like so many like inconsistencies. Like just keeping on Dorn, right? The Sword of Dorn is like in multiple places, and different chapters have it.
That's
And-
real Blood
and-
Ravens energy.
Well, and there's a tournament that happens every so often. I don't know, maybe Ryan knows.
Feast
The
of
Mortal
Blades.
Kombat. Yeah.
The Feast of
No.
Blades.
That's not the Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat.
You're thinking of the Skull Harvest.
Sure.
I'm talking about the
I think
Feast of
that-
Blades, where all of the Dorn successors, all the members of the Last Wall come together, and they have a tournament to decide who gets the Sword of Dorn.
Well,
But also
wouldn't that
this-
explain how it's like all over the place,
No,
like how it
because
keeps
the
popping
Sword of Dorn,
chapters?
the Sword of Dorn is also on the Eternal Crusader because it's what Templars swear oaths on.
So everybody has it.
Now,
Everybody's got this sword.
Is the Sword of Dorn his gigantic chainsword?
No, not even. It's just a sword. It's a regular fucking sword. So like, that's the other thing. Dorn didn't
So
have a
that could
sword.
be the confusion. He did
Yeah,
have a
Dorn
sword.
didn't
He had
have a sword.
gigantic. He did.
had a chain sword.
gigantic chainsword. Yeah. But that's still a
He had-
sword.
No, but the Sword of Dorn is what's on Grimaldus's, like the symbol of the Sword of Dorn is what's
Right.
on Grimaldus's backpack. It's
Well,
just a
what
sword.
I'm saying is, there's like the Sword of Dorn.
Everybody-
that is like a sword, and then there's like the chainsword he used.
Sure,
Some people
okay,
might call that
yeah.
the Sword of Dorn,
We can.
and the
You're
other thing
right.
the Sword of Dorn. You know,
I always like to me like that's like the when I think of Teeth of Terra, which is not I don't think a relic anymore, but it was every other edition. That was always my
I think
image
it's a
for Teeth.
crusade thing now. Maybe.
Okay,
I
cool.
don't know.
That was always my like image for the Teeth of Terra was the Dorn big ass
Yeah.
chainsword.
So I just have some other. I have like a list of like retcons that I found kind of interesting.
Love it.
One of them is kind of gesturing broadly at the entirety of the Horus Heresy. Because, like,
Sure.
that's kind of like a well-known one, that the Horus Heresy was just created because they didn't have a reason for two armies of Imperial Titans to be fighting each other when Titanicus came out. So they created the Horus Heresy.
That's
No,
not
the
true.
heresy. The heresy
is
is
true.
referenced. The heresy is referenced in Rogue Trader.
It wasn't like what it is
But like
now.
what it is, right? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
agreed.
The bones for it were there.
What the
pun
Horus
intended.
Heresy is now was like
Yes.
created in the Titanicus box set that came out in 1988. Because they only had the tooling to create like one set of Titans
Yeah.
for it. I think it was originally supposed to be Imperial versus Eldar. And so they were like, we can't afford that. So we ended up with like the modern interpretation of the Horus Heresy, essentially.
Like Dawn of War 3
Yeah.
had the Eldar Titans and the Imperial Titans, which makes it the best Dawn of War game.
I'm banning
Don't people
Sean.
hate Dawn of War 3?
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
joke.
Another one, Gene Stealer cults were originally not related to Tyranids. They were originally just Chaos cults.
Mhm.
So you actually have gone back to true form.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
Yes. It took me a second
You-
to like
you-
catch up to why you were saying that, but yes,
yeah.
What you need is a
Necrons were
limousine, though.
I do need the limo.
Yeah.
Necrons were Chaos
Yeah,
androids.
of course.
Yeah, they were just Terminators. They
Yeah.
didn't really
Well,
have
but
any
the- but-
personality or lore.
But they were
Yeah,
also
they
like
were, like-
specifically they were specifically Chaos androids, which
Yeah.
now exist separately from
Yeah.
Necrons as of
Yeah.
Father of whatever that book was that we read
Gene Father.
last year. Gene Father.
Gene Father, yeah.
Yeah.
They were
The
originally kind of like
father of genes.
an environmental thing that could happen in a mission. Like you could have like Necrons all of a sudden show up and start walking in and shooting everybody.
Yeah, we're
Just
truly in
mindless.
kind of like the third. We're in like the third interpretation of Necrons, because like Chaos Androids
Yeah.
was like the first one. Then they like moved into being their own like Xenos faction, where they were just like Terminators, mindless. They didn't like have any named characters or like important lore. And now we're on like their Tomb Kings in space.
And they're like some of the Necron characters are some of the more interesting characters and more
Like,
interesting lore.
Necrons like on a per, I don't know the fucking right word for it, like per capita basis have like the best novels, right? Like the ratio of like number of novels to like number of good novels is like way higher in Necrons than any other faction.
That's why I'm really I bought what's the one the collector guy?
Trazyn the Infinite?
Trazyn the Infinite, yeah. Infinite
Trazyn.
and
I bought Infinite and the Divine, hoping we were going to do that for book
Hmm.
club, and then that wasn't on the book club list.
We will. We'll get there. I feel like a lot of people do that one, so I wanted to start with a couple
Sure.
of like kind of offshoot options.
Sure. I should
yeah.
look at that what we're reading.
Assassinorum Kingmaker. So that's one that like came out relatively recently and got a lot of praise. So
Okay.
I'm kind of interested. I haven't started it yet.
Is sure when's our
but March 26th, I think.
fuck me.
I'll have to look. We got some time though. What's another one? Tau FTL. I don't know if Zach's in chat, but he can probably expand on that one a little bit.
Yeah. But I think they have
Tau
explained-
went from
I
like
think-
having FTL to no longer having FTL,
And then having FTL
and
again.
then like developing FTL and then blowing it up, and then Deus Ex Machina creating a wormhole, and now they have like a different kind of FTL now. It's crazy. But like, how did they create a interstellar empire with sublight travel only? That doesn't make any sense.
Well,
So-
but the Tau are one of the few factions that are just in one corner of the galaxy.
Yeah.
Sure, they're still interstellar, which is not feasible.
Sure.
Is not feasible on sublight travel.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like the current lore, I don't think they discovered FTL until like the 42nd millennium or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Or at least we weren't aware of them having it.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't
Right.
really rise up. They like rose up very quickly, like unnaturally quickly.
Yeah.
If I remember right.
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard like I want to say because like I got Tau when they first came out, and I want to say in that book they didn't have FTL; they just had like near light speed, and it was like their expansion's like very slow by comparison because they can't
Yeah.
move through the warp. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
they had to give them something better than that.
Which like that was like
I-
a really weird retcon. I don't really know why they did that. It doesn't
Yeah.
like make
What
sense
is-
in like the setting, but you know.
At one point, didn't they have they were essentially skipping through like very shallow layers of the warp? 'Cause
Yeah,
they couldn't
that
go.
was like kind of where they landed now with the like fourth sphere expansion stuff. I forget, it was like a slipstream driver or something like that. I don't remember what it was called.
Well, that's why the what's it called? Is it the Startide Nexus?
Yeah. That's
I
the
think.
wormhole. Yeah. That they
Yeah, that's why
created.
the wormhole's so
that they like
important to 'em.
accidentally created. Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it's a really good transportation means for them.
Yeah. To my understanding, Grey Knights and Death Watch no longer answering to the Inquisition is a retcon.
Well, okay, so it's complicated. It like is and it isn't. Like it's partly like the Krieg shovel thing of like
Okay.
people
what way?
sort of like people sort of taking like a minor facet of their like existence and like applying it broadly,
Sure.
right? Like they exist as the same with sisters. They all exist as the
Militant arms of their
militant arm of
Ordo.
that,
Yeah.
right? But that doesn't mean they only exist as the militant arm of those Ordos,
Sure.
right? And so that's sort of the like disconnect is there's lots of Death Watch watch fortresses, or like with the Grey Knights sort of like don't like they sometimes work with the Ordo
Malleus.
Hereticus Malleus. Sometimes work with Ordo Malleus, but oftentimes they're like, we don't want to fucking deal with Inquisitors.
I mean, the Grey Knights arguably existed before the Inquisition.
Yes, not arguably, they absolutely did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Knights
and
yeah.
Yeah,
and like the other thing too is if you're not a what is Cariadrasis is a she's specific to like there's two like sects of Inquisitors.
Oh, the like extremists and the
yeah. If you're not an radical Inquisitor, thank you. If you're not a radical Inquisitor, you're not going to want to work with Death Watch. They're fucking covered in like they're covered in Xenos shit. Like they bring Xenos weaponry.
Radical in what's the other term? I can't remember what the other one is. That's not like an official designation.
There is like a term that they use, and I don't remember what it is.
Radical is the term they use for
oh yeah,
Cariadrasis.
Yeah, it's a term that they use, but it's not like in the Inquisition you get a badge that says you're a radical Inquisitor.
No, correct. But it is like an ideology. There is like an ideology there. Yeah. If you're not a radical Inquisitor, you're not going to want to work with Death Watch when they fucking bring out a Necron faceblade, right? Like,
yeah,
you're gonna go, hey, you can't have that.
Like AdMech thing.
Yeah.
If you're, I think is it Zealot?
Yeah, the Xenorites.
Yeah, if you're a Zealot Ordo Malleus Inquisitor, you probably don't like the Grey Knights whipping out a Demon Blade.
True. Sure. No, not at all. Well, to be fair, but him having that Demon Blade is like like only that one guy has the Demon Blade, and
he has a really good reason for it. I promise.
Do they not have other Demon Blades? I thought they had like other lesser Demon Blades.
They may, but
isn't that like what the Nemesis weapons are?
That's what I thought. I'm not real up on. I thought the Nemesis weapons were like bound, like heavily bound demons, but I could be wrong. I'm not a Grey Knight lore master.
Yeah. Ashton.
Another thing Ashton could be here to tell us about.
Yeah. Tell us about Lord of the Rings. Tell us about Grey Knights. Another one that I think is funny is the origins of the name Astartes. Being named after Amar Astarte, That's like kind of a recent retcon. It's got real like Land Raider energy. It's real Jimmy Space energy.
Yeah.
Well, they actually have. Who's Amara Astarte?
She was like a scientist that was kind of like instrumental in creating the first Space Marines. And so they like named the Astartes in her honor, basically. Yeah, it's like the land. That's like the Land Raider shit all over again. It's Jimmy Space. It's just Jimmy Space. Yeah. So that shit's funny. My favorite one that I learned about, and Ryan, I think that you will also enjoy this one. Orcs. Orcs used to be marsupials. I have an excerpt here to read for you.
What?
Just
Why?
Hear me out. Let me read this
All
excerpt.
right.
Yeah.
Orcs have no genders. The breeding ability develops in an orc after he reaches maturity and becomes feral. Roughly half of the wild orcs develop marsupial pouches, in which an orc whelp is born and nurtured. After a short span of time, the whelp is big enough to leave the pouch. The feral parent feeds the whelp on squigs and teaches him how to survive in the wilderness. So before orcs were fungus,
What is that from?
they were kangaroos.
Do you know what this?
I can find out. I don't recall. This
Holy
was Wog the Orcs from 1990.
That's my new lore for orcs in my D&D setting.
Do we need to?
They're marsupials. Yeah.
They're marsupials.
We need to convert some prego orc, lore accurate prego orcs.
No. If you show up to the table with pregnant orcs, I will not play against you.
Well, hold on, but it's okay because they're not actually pregnant. They just have a squig strapped to their belly.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
no, I'm back in.
Or
I'm back
Or
in.
a
They
grot.
have a squig in
Like
their
they got a
pants.
little grot. They got a little grot sticking out of their belly.
Yeah.
Was the
That's
Gorgamorka
hilarious.
game when they first did the whole fungus thing? Because like the Gorgamorka game
It was,
in one
yes.
of the books has like
Gorkamorka
whole
was
breakdown.
the inception
Yeah.
of the idea that they're fungus.
Well, there's also the Olenor like retcon.
Olenor being Armageddon.
Or Olenor being Armageddon, but also like the War of the Beast is the resurgence of Olenor, but it's not Armageddon. But it is.
Well, was the War of the Beast and did it involve Olenor? I didn't think it involved Olenor.
Yeah, it does. It does involve Olenor.
I need to read that series at one point.
War of the Beast is fascinating. Like it's because it's like not good.
Siege of Terra and the End in the Death specifically took a sledgehammer to a bunch of established canon as well. So I haven't like read those. The only one that I like kind of heard about was the Alanius stuff. But that's like been
already had that spoiled.
The Alanius stuff has like been retconned in like 4 different ways. But it's like simultaneously retcon and also not retcon. It's weird.
They also like retcon how many books the End of the Death is.
True. They did do that. Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, hey, it's gonna be what 3 books, 2 books originally. Actually, it's another book.
Yeah. And then now there's another one coming out soon. I think.
Yeah.
They were like, it's done now. Except actually.
I'm finally in the Siege of Terra. I'm reading some other stuff for reasons first, but I need to finish that.
Are you reading Assassinorum Kingmaker?
I'm going to, but I gotta
Hell
read
yeah.
something else before I read that.
What do you have to read? Is it a secret?
It's a little bit of a secret.
Why is
Well,
it
it's not. Okay, I'll tell you. I'm reading the Fabius Bile books because I want to get some information on something.
on Petros the Bazor?
No, he's tragically not in there.
Not yet.
I should have done a slideshow on Petros the Bazor. It'd been really short though.
It would have been very short. Petros the Bazor is
It's like this
cool.
really cool dude who wants to take all the drugs in the galaxy and he pukes in his mask.
Next
and
slide.
that's
Any
it.
questions?
Next one. Any questions? I just like his
I-
vibe, man. You know, you meet someone and they're like, they just have the certain vibe. You're like, yeah, man, you're cool. Petros had that vibe.
Petros had that vibe, yeah.
Yeah.
I just hear Petros and I think of the sportscaster.
What else? Oh,
I don't know. sports.
Alfarius and Omegon weren't two separate people until 2008 in the novel Legion.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They just didn't want you to think they weren't two different people.
That's the retcon, yeah. What the Demiurge? We talked about that one a little bit before the stream, I think.
We'll talk.
Yeah,
about
the Demiurge. So just real quick, the Demiurge were Votan, and they weren't Votan, and now they're Votan again.
Yeah.
Well, they were squats, and then they weren't squats, and then they were Votan. Is my understanding.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's like kind of all the ones that I had listed out because I thought they were interesting. Yeah.
So just real quick, if anyone is interested in War of the Beast, just because we brought it up, they are, if you're an Audible listener, we're not sponsored and we don't have an Audible code, so fuck off. But you can. So the problem with listening to the problem with listening to the War of the Beast originally was you had to buy each book individually, and they're not that long on Audible. So if you're spending credits, it's like not worth your credits. But they just compiled it and released it as 4 separate books that now are worth your credit. So
I have a bunch of Audible credits burning a hole in my pocket. So
yes, saying no, I just spent mine and then canceled my Audible subscription.
I should probably do
but
that.
I am currently on, I believe, For Vulcan, which is book 7. Hunt for Vulcan, book 7 of War of the Beast.
How many
books
books
I might
are
be on
War of
the-
Beast?
A lot, like 12.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
that's not a lot compared to the horse.
Says
It's
the
a lot-
motherfucker almost done through the Horus Heresy.
Sure. I think it's 12. Yeah, I think it's 3 books per like title on
Per volume.
per volume.
Yeah.
So make sure if you are going to read it, get the volumes and not because you can still buy the individual books. Don't do that. Get the volumes on Audible.
Woof. Taking a look at our poll here. Is the Wraithbone retcon good or bad? Good 38%, bad 62. Wow. People hate Wraithbone.
Yeah, I was shocked when I saw that. How many people were like,
Yeah. So like if you guys are selling your Wraith armies, let me know cuz I'm in the market.
I do want to convert some Wraithguard to grotesques. Kind of because I have to, because there's no way to buy grotesques.
That's
But,
because Drukhari are getting a refresh.
God, I can't wait. Also, I have like probably 3,000 points of Drukhari or more. I don't need any more Drukhari, but
All right. I'm
if
slowly
they
becoming
refresh, I'm going to buy it all.
more and more incoherent because I'm on my 4th tall boy. So
Hell yeah.
I think we should probably go ahead and wrap it up. Unless you guys have any more retcons that you think are interesting. But
No, I mean, I
kinda-
think you
kinda
covered
went
more
through all
than-
the ones that I thought were cool.
I miss Space Marines that had like graffiti on their armor a little
The
bit.
Ganger Space Marines.
Mine do.
Yeah,
Rogue
the
Traders.
psych.
Mine have
Well,
religious.
yeah, but it's religious graffiti.
Damn.
One day, I'm gonna rope y'all into playing Rogue Trader. We might want to shoot ourselves afterwards because of how
Is that
clunky it
before or
but-
after you rope us into Gorka Morka?
After. I'm gonna get you.
Hell yeah. What are you doing there, Sean? Oh, that's so cute.
Look at that
I gave
little
Rex
guy.
an umbrella. I gave Rex an umbrella.
That's so cute. Look at that little guy. Now he's gonna be able to protect himself from the rain. His voice is getting cut off. I have no idea what he's saying. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Remember to like, sub, share this, join the Discord. Discord link is in the description. Join as a channel member or patron if you want to. Here's our members. You can join as an executive content watcher to get your name on here. Or you can join the Slammo tier and we'll say your name out loud, like One Speed Wonder and Swanee, who I learned is the Alucord. Alucord is Swanee. That is the
We cracked the code.
they are one and the same. Are you being
Slam
thirsty
boom.
for orcs in chat, Ryan?
No, it wants me to wonder when you're talking about them being marsupials. Said orcs are confirmed to be wombats. If they're wombats, that explains the old like hams they used to have, like the big donkers, the like cake.
All I have
popping
to
out,
say
you know?
is wombats have cube poops. Good night.